Calls for New Zealand to develop a clear strategy for opening our borders are coming from an unlikely collective. The former Chief Science Advisor, Sir Peter Gluckman, the former Prime Minister, Helen Clark, and former Air New Zealand Chief Executive, Rob Fyfe, have co-authored a paper saying keeping the country isolated for too long will cause huge damage to the economy. The paper calls for a clear, transparent strategy and questions whether those discussions can be sensibly had this close to an election. Regardless, there's already a queue forming for destinations that would love reciprocal deals with New Zealand. When it comes to the numbers, South Australia's had 443 COVID cases and 4 deaths. It usually gets around 56,000 Kiwi visitors a year, and the head of South Australia's tourism body, Rodney Harricks, says they're keen to get those tourists back as soon as possible.
Look, I know that there's been a lot of dialogue happening on this subject. I know the federal government, the Australian federal government is keen to look at this. So yes, we've sort of been putting our case to what the opportunity is, how important getting Kiwis travelling around South Australia, exploring what South Australia has to offer is really crucial for us. I tell you, look, we've seen over 17,000 Kiwis just, as at the 29th of June. They've been spending about 5 minutes on southaustralia.com looking at what they can do when they come here. So what we know is that there's plenty of interest.
You've got a massive country compared to little old New Zealand. Why do you need us? Why don't you just coax Australians from other states to come and visit you?
Look, I think what's important is, we're already seeing South Australians getting out and about in South Australia. But what is important is that there's a strong connection between New Zealand and Australia, and I think this is a really important one. Look, I lived in Auckland many years ago for about a year and a half, and I think after living there for a year and a half, it gave me a decent connection. There's a really strong bond, and I think, in difficult times we need to support each other. There's a few of you guys to get around and explore what our country has to offer. I think what's important here is beyond this, we become ambassadors. We're ambassadors of each other's countries. So, we've got to be there supporting each other, and I think this is a really strong way of doing that.
You mentioned the fact that you haven't had cases for quite a significant number of days, but you have had 2 cases in relatively recent times, which were people crossing over the border from Victoria, right? So potentially, if you're going to have a relationship with us, is it going to be an exclusive relationship? Because close to you are cities that have, big problems with COVID at the moment.
Lisa, look, I think what's really important here is, as a society, we've got to learn how to live and manage with COVID-19, and I think that's really important. As countries, we've demonstrated, and our health professionals have demonstrated that. And you're correct, there have been some recent cases. Those cases actually came in from overseas, and those individuals are actually quarantined within hotels. So they're in a fixed period quarantine within a hotel. So you're right, there have been a couple of recent cases, but I think what is important as countries, we've got to learn how to live and how to look to the future, how we get our economies going, and we've got to learn to live and by clear advice from health professionals about how we do keep our economies going, but importantly, how we keep people moving. What we know pre-COVID is that, as individuals, we really enjoyed that opportunity to experience and engage with people from around the world. And I think, again, given that strong connection between Australia and New Zealand, I think there's an opportunity for us to really use that and build on that into the future.
Okay, so here's the tough one, Rodney. You get to choose between Melbourne and us. Who is it?
Now, see, Lisa, that's a tough one. We'd want to welcome both of you. Look,
you can't though, can you? Because Victoria's got major problems. The Premier there is talking about the need to maybe even shut down more areas in Melbourne, and that's the risk for New Zealanders coming there, isn't it? It's not coming to visit you in South Australia. It's other people coming over the state border from higher risk areas that might put us off. So if you had to choose, Rodney, Melbourne or us?
Based on the current advice, unfortunately, people from Victoria can't travel to South Australia. So what I would say to you at the moment, we'd love to welcome Kiwis here to South Australia because we're opening up our borders, and our Premier has announced to Queensland, Northern Territory, they're already open, and we're opening up to others in the very near future. So, look,
you choose us, Rodney. You choose us.
There's an opportunity right now to welcome Kiwis here to South Australia, and I think that's the thing. I think what's really important here, Lisa, is, the South Australian government have actually committed to support the Victorians. We've actually sent health professionals there, and I think this is a really important point that I was talking about earlier, is we're in this together, and, Australians, New Zealanders, we need to be supporting each other, and the way that we can do that is connecting our two countries, get our people travelling to each other's countries, investing and buying local products. I think that's our opportunity, and I would encourage your listeners to start, dreaming and planning about what they can do in South Australia, and visit southaustralia.com.
But you have, in a way, just identified the core problem there, haven't you, Rodney? We don't want to be in it together with everyone. We want to be in it with those people who have got the problem under control. And that's the issue, to just have a relationship with South Australia if numbers are low. Makes it more complicated if you're also having a relationship with Victoria, who isn't in the same situation, and other states that might have bad infection rates.
Yeah, but Lisa, I think, as I said, we as societies are going to have to work ways to manage this and keep our societies going, and I think that's a really important point.
And that's South Australia's tourism body boss, Rodney Harricks there. He's dead keen on this idea of a trans-Tasman bubble if it aligns with countries with low COVID numbers.